What up, I'm Chet Papelka, and this is the Braves TomaBlog. So I wanted to get back to making some what you can expect from videos. If you're new to this channel, it's about the Braves. And some of my most popular videos are the ones in which I break down Braves prospects in terms of who they are, what to expect from their development, and the type of player I'm expecting them to develop into. So on this channel thus far, I've covered Kevin Maitan, who's no longer here, Ronald Acuna Jr., Kyle Wright, Austin Riley, and Luis Gohara. Those are available on this channel if you want to check those out. And hopefully in the next few weeks I'll be able to cover some more guys, but I have to hurry because they're getting to the majors like now. Some of them are at least. So for this one I'm breaking down Christian Pache, who's the Braves' 19-year-old center field prospect. So in this video I want to break down who he is and where he came from, the tools that he has, sort of track his development and what we can expect from him long term, and then get to some comps of the type of player that we might see out of him. And so starting off with who he is, where did he come from, as we covered, he's a 19-year-old center fielder from the Dominican Republic. We signed him as a 16-year-old back in 2015. And so 2015 was that first crop of those John Hart, John Capalella international players. We didn't get in trouble for those ones. It was the next year that we got in trouble. But he was not a crapshoot of a player. You know, that's what Acuna was, like a $100,000 signing a few years ago. Pache cost $1.4 million. He was the 14th rated international player that year. And so he was one of the prizes of the class for us. He was one of those guys that when we signed him, no one really knows who these guys are when we get them, but we were excited for him, and we were hoping he would turn into a good player, and thus far he has. So tools that I want to get into, he's listed at 6'2", 185 pounds across every single player board that I've seen, which if you remember the Luis Gohara video, it's a bit of a problem. But the fact that he's listed, he's 6'2", 185 pounds everywhere, that means that's pretty trustworthy. So when we signed Pache as a 16-year-old, he was tall, he was lanky, he was fast, he always had a good hit tool. And the hit tool has been one of the more consistent aspects of his game throughout his 3-year development to this point. He was a very raw center fielder. He had super dynamic closing speed. When he came into camp this year, there was a quote from someone, I can't remember who, but it became the most commonly used quote for him that said, as things stand, Pache is the best fielder in the Braves organization. So they were saying that Pache is currently better than Ender Inciarte is, who is, you know, essentially the undisputed best center fielder in the league right now, or at least in the National League. So if baseball were just fielding, Christian Pache would be in the majors right now. He'd be the best at it. So that ability in itself, it essentially guarantees him a spot on a big league roster 2-3 years from now. If everything went horrible, he would still have a spot on a big league roster, because the ability to, you know, close in center field the way he does, the arm that he has, and his ability to steal bases is enough to get you onto a big league roster. So as I've said on this channel multiple times before, speed first outfielders are my least favorite kinds of prospects because they're a dime a dozen. But they all start as speed-first outfielders. 16-year-olds never have home run power, and so when you sign players when they're 16, they're not Kevin Maitan. Typically, they're taller, lankier, and faster, and you're hoping to develop home run power out of that. Same thing with Ronald Acuna Jr., if you remember. When he was in the low levels, he was small, and he didn't have much power at all. So he was a base stealer who defended center field well. He hit 300. But if you look at Ronald Acuna this year, in the major leagues, he's a completely different player. He's got as much home run power as anyone probably besides Ozzie Albies, and I think that he might even develop more home run power than Ozzie. He's only stolen 5 bases to this point this year. It's currently August, and he's hitting 265 right now. So you think about the guy who was hitting 300 and stealing bases 2 years ago. He's hitting 265 with 10 home runs and 5 stolen bases. Acuna's completely changed the player that he was. And I think you can expect a lot of the same thing with Christian Pache. In fact, you know, there have been a ton of comparisons between Pache and Acuna, and it's not just based on the team. I think that they're pretty similar. They do play the same position. So as Pache gets closer to the big leagues, you're starting to see that approach already change. So in his first 2 years as a pro, he didn't hit any home runs. He had 0 home runs. But he hit 280 and 300 the year before that. He had a high OBP. He didn't strike out much. He stole a lot of bases. So in 2017, last year, he had 27 stolen bases. This year, as I make this video on August 2nd, he's hitting .285, .311, .431 with 8 home runs and 40 RBIs, but he's only stolen 8 bases. It's weird to drop from 27 to 8 stolen bases, especially when he's getting on base about as much. It's odd the way stolen bases numbers can change like that. Same thing with Acuna, same thing with Dansby. They just don't steal bases anymore. I think it has a lot more to do with the coach and whether they vibe with the first base coach. But you're seeing Pache focus a lot more on home runs, which he should be. Pache has always had a ton of gap power, and there's so much pop in his swing that he hadn't turned into home run power. So with young, strong guys like that, you see them figure something out, and the home run power can shoot off. So that's what you're seeing right now with Ozzie Albies. If you remember, when he was in the minors, he did not hit home runs that much. He was, he's 5'8". No one expected him to be a home run hitter. He figured out something, and now he's hit 20 home runs this year. In the state of Major League Baseball, you can't be a ground ball hitter anymore. So in any era of baseball, you would be trying to tap into Pache's home run power, because it's there, because he clearly has power that he's not tapping into. But in another era of baseball, you would be okay with him hitting 8 home runs in a year if he could get on base that much. But you can't be a ground ball hitter anymore, no matter how fast you are. Defensive shifts have taken, you can't do it anymore because of the shift. And he's, especially with a left-handed swing, so he is going to have to work on a launch angle, and he is going to have to work in developing the gap power, hitting the ball higher. And so, like I said, speed and fielding will go a long way in getting him to the majors. He doesn't have to develop anything else. He can be a major leaguer with just the speed and the fielding, but it won't make him that good of a major league fielder. And so he's going to have to optimize the physical gifts that he has to be the player that he does have the ability to be, which I think is a perennial all-star. What physical gifts does he have? I think he has all of them. I think he's a freak athlete. He's got a 70 grade speed. I think he's got 80 grade fielding. He's got a 55 grade hit tool, and it's improving. The only thing that's behind is his power, which I think you're already seeing it come in. If you've seen him take BP, or if you've seen him in the minor leagues, you see that the pop is there. He just hasn't turned it into home run or regular home run power yet. But the fact that he might hit 10, 12 home runs this year says he's learning quickly, and he gets it. So I want to touch on his development real quick. So he's 19 right now, and I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago he got promoted to AA. And so that's where Ozzie was when he was 19. Acuna was breaking out of AA when he was 19. So he's ahead of pace, but I like the way they're developing him right now, because essentially it's on pace with our really good international hitters. 19-year-old at AA, looks like you're doing great for a Brave. So I don't like it when guys are just too good for the minors. I talked about this with Acuna, is that I didn't want him to just shoot through the minors and be good everywhere that he went. I like to see them struggle. I like to see them have 25 strikeouts in a week, because what that does is it forces them to listen to their coaches. It tests them, their ability to listen, their confidence to know that this is not the player that I am, and I'll work out of this. That way, when they do work out of it, they have that confidence to know that I know how to deal with struggles now. Because when you get to the majors, you are going to strike out 20 times in a week, and you do need to know how to work out of that. If not, you could see prolonged struggles. And so that's why I say guys that skip AAA, they deal with streakiness, and it's a lot worse. That's where you see it with guys like Jason Hayward, that he skipped AAA, and he deals with bad streakiness throughout the rest of his career. And so hopefully the development that I'm looking for from Christian Pache is pretty much the same one that Austin Riley is on right now, where Austin Riley at the end of 2017 got a taste of AA. He did well at AA, and then after spring training they send him to AA. He's seen AA pitching before, and he kills it. He earns his promotion to AAA, where you see his numbers take a little bit of a dip. He's dealt with some injuries, but still, Austin Riley's being a professional at AAA, and he's still hitting really well. He's still one of the best players in AAA right now. And so then we have the option to bring him up if we want to, or we can wait till next year. I'm looking for the same thing out of Christian Pache. Gets an exposure to AA this year. You bring him back at AA next year. Hopefully it's as though he hasn't missed a beat, and he just kills AA pitching. You bring him up to AAA, and then you have the option, if he does well, that you can bring him up later in the season, or you can treat him like Ronald Acuna, keep him at AAA, and decide if you want to hold off and make him wait 2 weeks to come up the next year, and you get an extra year of team control. And so that way he would be either 20 or 21 by the time he came up. Once again, if he takes until he's 22, not the end of the world. And so that's, if he deals with prolonged struggles, which once again, as I'm saying, it's a good thing. And so that's the development curve I'm looking for out of Christian Pache. Everything seems to be going according to plan with Christian thus far. So the last thing I want to touch on is comparisons. Comps are always the funnest part of doing these prospect analyses. And so I think that the baseline comparison for Christian Pache, and this is a minimum, if he never has a hit tool that flourishes, if he never develops any power, I think the minimum comparison is Byron Buxton or Billy Hamilton. So they're the guys that steal 30, 40 bases, and they play, excellent defense in center field. And so with Buxton, you saw he was a #1 pick, and he took a while because the hit tool just never developed. But he still has a positive WAR, he steals lots of bases, he covers a ton of ground in center field, and that's enough to make him a positive player, one that the Twins would like to have in center field. With Hamilton, his bat has struggled enough that, the Reds are always asking, is this the guy that we want in center field because we can get something better here, especially in this ballpark? But same thing, you're going to stay, if you're just that fast and that good of a fielder, you've got a role here, at minimum as a defensive substitution or pinch runner. But generally, people will want you in their lineup. But let's say that the bat does develop. Let's say that he does reach the level of player that he can become. And so for me, I put that as a 15 to 20 home run guy, a 280 to 300 hitter who can steal 30 bases with the premium level of defense in center field. I think for that guy, the comparisons are endless. So I think I just described Christian Yelich. I think I just described Charlie Blackmon, A.J. Pollock, Lorenzo Cain, Starling Marte. That made me think of Adam Jones, Curtis Granderson, Jacoby Ellsbury during their primes. That's what these guys were, 280 hitters or better that stole 20 to 30 bases, and they hit home runs the whole time along the way. They're, key cogs in their lineup, and especially if you think about with Pache developing on this team, if you put him in the middle of that lineup where he's going to get good pitches to hit, I think the sky is frankly the limit. I don't want to say the sky is the limit, and the reason is that, to say that, there is a level of center fielder above that. I think that that's Mike Trout. I think that that's Mookie Betts. I don't think that he's going to hit 35, 40 home runs. I don't think that he'll be competing for batting crowns every single year, but I do think that he can get to around that level. And so you may get the power you want right away. You never know. But if you think about the idea of Christian Pache in an outfield with Ender Inciarte and Ronald Acuna Jr., is that not just the best defensive outfield you've ever heard of? That's not a ton of power out of your outfield, but if you think that you can rely on 20 bombs a year from Ronald Acuna, Austin Riley, Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, that's 4 player hitting 20 home runs, that's 80 home runs, and then you fill in a couple more from Dansby, Ender, and Pache. That's, oh my goodness, that's such a good team. And so yeah, I'm good to conclude this there. I've taken this a little bit long. But yeah, that's my assessment of Christian Pache. How do you guys think that I assessed him? Do you think that I was a little too optimistic, a little pessimistic, that I didn't touch on the player that he can be? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to talk more with you guys about this. And so thank you guys for listening. I'm Chet Popelka, and this is the Braves TomaBlog. It's a YouTube channel about the Braves where I'm currently doing a podcast format. If that sounds interesting to you, give the channel a look, see if it's for you. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and go Braves.